The emergency sirens screamed through Novachin's research vessel as it plummeted through Xerian's toxic atmosphere. Red warning lights bathed the cockpit in an ominous glow while she fought desperately with the controls. Her hands moved frantically across the dashboard, trying to stabilize the failing engines that had been damaged by the unexpected electromagnetic storm. "Come on, you piece of junk," Nova muttered through gritted teeth, her dark hair whipping. Around her face, as the ship shuddered violently, the planet's surface rushed toward her at terrifying speed, its purple-tinged landscape dotted with jagged crystal formations that could tear her vessel apart. The impact came like thunder. Nova's world exploded into chaos as her ship carved a deep trench through the alien soil, throwing up clouds of violet dust and shattered rock. The safety harness cut into her shoulders as she was thrown forward, her head striking the console. With a sickening crack, darkness claimed her for several hours. When consciousness slowly returned, Nova found herself hanging upside down in the wreckage, warm liquid trickling down her forehead. Her left arm throbbed with sharp pain, and every breath sent spikes of agony through her ribs. The cockpit's emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows across the twisted metal. She managed to free herself from the harness, crying out as she fell heavily to what had been the ceiling. Her survival training kicked in despite the pain. First priority: assess injuries. Her arm wasn't broken, just badly bruised, and her ribs seemed cracked but not displaced. The head wound was bleeding but not deep. Nova crawled toward the emergency kit, her movements slow and deliberate. The ship's hull had been breached in multiple places, allowing Xerian's harsh wind to whistle through the gaps. She activated her portable scanner and grimaced at the readings. The atmosphere was barely breathable for humans, with toxic levels of sulfur compounds that would slowly poison her without proper filtration equipment. As she bandaged her wounds, Nova heard something that made her freeze. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, circling her crashed vessel. Her heart hammered against her injured ribs as she reached for the plasma pistol in her emergency kit. Through a crack in the hull, she caught a glimpse of her visitor. The being was tall, easily 7 feet, with lean but powerful muscle definition visible beneath dark blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer in Xerian's purple twilight. His features were angular and sharp, with high cheekbones and intense golden eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. Intricate silver markings traced patterns across his arms and neck, and his long black hair was pulled back in warrior braids. Adorned with small metal rings, Nova recognized the species immediately from military briefings, Valdris's enemy soldiers who had been at war with humanity for over a decade. Her finger tightened on the weapon's trigger as the alien approached her ship, but instead of attacking, he knelt beside the largest breach in the hull and spoke in accented but clear human standard. "You are injured. I can smell the blood." Kept the pistol trained on him, her voice shaky but defiant. "Stay back. I'm armed." The Valdris warrior's golden eyes met hers through the gap, and she saw something unexpected there. It's not hostility or aggression, but what looked almost like concern. "My name is Kale Zorith. You are dying slowly in there. This planet's air will poison you within 2 rotations of its moons." "Why would you care?" Nova demanded, though her arm was beginning to tremble from holding the weapon steady. "We're enemies." Kale was quiet for a long moment, his intense gaze never leaving her face. Because leaving someone to die alone is not the Valdris way, even if they are human. Nova felt her strength ebbing as shock and blood loss took their toll. Her weapon wavered as darkness crept at the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw before consciousness faded was Kale's powerful hands, carefully tearing away the twisted metal to reach her when she woke again. She was no longer in her ship. Nova's eyes opened to the soft glow of bioluminescent crystals. Embedded in curved stone walls, she lay on a bed of thick, surprisingly soft, moss-like vegetation, covered by a blanket woven from some kind of metallic fiber that radiated gentle warmth. Her injuries had been carefully tended, clean bandages wrapped her head and arm, and the sharp pain in her ribs had dulled to a manageable ache. "You wake at last," came Kale's deep voice from across the cavern. He sat near a small pool of crystal-clear water, using what looked like a primitive but effective filtration system to purify it. You have been unconscious for nearly a full rotation. Nova sat up slowly, taking in her surroundings. The cavern was larger than it had first appeared, with multiple chambers branching off from the main area. The ceiling arched high overhead, decorated with natural formations that caught and reflected the crystal light in beautiful patterns. It was surprisingly comfortable, almost cozy. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice still rough from dehydration.
"An
old sanctuary," Kale replied, bringing her a cup of the filtered water. "My people use these caves during the crystal storms that rage across Zirian's surface. It is safe here." Nova accepted the water gratefully, studying his face as she drank. Up close, she could see the intelligence in those golden eyes, and the way his silver markings seemed to shift and change in the crystal light. "Why did you save me? We're at war." Kale settled onto a flat stone across from her makeshift bed, his movements graceful despite his size. "War is what happens between armies and governments. You are just one person, far from any battlefield." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. "You were afraid when I found you, but you did not shoot. That tells me something about who you are." "Maybe I was just too weak to pull the trigger," Nova said, though without much conviction. A small smile played at the corners of Kale's mouth. "Your weapon was set to maximum charge? If you had wanted me dead, I would be. No, you chose not to. Kill me, even though everything you have been taught says you should." Over the following hours, they began to communicate more freely. Nova learned that Kale was not just a warrior, but also a scholar of sorts, fascinated by different cultures and species. He spoke several human languages with varying degrees of fluency and seemed genuinely curious about her work as a research. "Engineer, what were you doing in this sector?" he asked as he prepared some kind of nutritious paste from local plants he had gathered. "Studying the electromagnetic phenomena that cause the storms," Nova replied, accepting the food despite its unappetizing appearance. To her surprise, it tasted rather pleasant, with a nutty flavor and slight sweetness. "My research station detected unusual energy signatures coming from Zarian. I was sent to investigate." Kale's golden eyes brightened with interest. "The storm. Dance, we call it. Our ancestors believed the lightning carried messages from the spirit realm, and you don't." Nova found herself genuinely curious about his answer. "I think the universe has many mysteries that science has not yet explained," he said thoughtfully. "Perhaps your technology and our ancient wisdom both contain pieces of the same truth." As Zirian's day cycle ended and the cavern grew dimmer, Kale showed Nova to a natural hot spring in one of the side chambers, carefully averting his eyes to give her privacy. The mineral-rich water eased her aches and helped her feel more human. Again, when she emerged, he had laid out clean clothes, simple but well-made garments that must have been his spares, altered to fit her smaller frame. That night, as they sat by the crystal light sharing stories of their respective worlds, Nova found herself looking at Kale not as an enemy soldier, but as simply a person. A complicated, thoughtful person who had risked his own safety to help her. When their hands accidentally touched as they both reached for the water cup, neither of them pulled away immediately. "Nova," he said softly, her name sounding musical in his accented voice. "Yes, what will happen when your people come looking for you?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither was quite ready to voice. Nova woke to the sound of Kale moving urgently around the cavern, gathering weapons and supplies. His usually calm demeanor had been replaced by tense alertness, his golden eyes scanning the cave entrance repeatedly. "What's wrong?" she asked, immediately sitting up despite her lingering soreness. "Shadow stalkers," he said grimly, strapping a curved blade to his back. "They hunt in packs during the dark cycle. My scent markers around the entrance have been disturbed." As if summoned by his words, an otherworldly howl echoed from somewhere in the tunnel system outside their sanctuary. The sound was unlike anything Nova had ever heard, part animal cry, part electronic screech that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Kale handed her a small but wickedly sharp knife. "Stay behind me. These creatures are cunning and fast." Nova hefted the blade, testing its weight. What do they look like? You will know when you see them, Kale said darkly. They are the reason my people abandoned these caves centuries ago. They didn't have to wait long. The first shadow stalker emerged from a side passage like liquid darkness given form. It was roughly the size of a large wolf, but moved with an unsettling fluidity, as if its body wasn't entirely solid. Red eyes glowed in what might have been a face, and when it opened its mouth, rows of crystalline teeth gleamed in the bioluminescent light. Nova felt her blood freeze, but Kale was already moving. His blade sang through the air, connecting with the creature in a shower of what looked like black sparks. The shadow stalker let out that horrible cry again, but instead of retreating, two more emerged from different tunnels. They're surrounding us, Nova breathed. Yes, Kale acknowledged, never taking his eyes off the circling predators. This is why we must hunt them first. What followed was unlike any battle Nova had ever imagined. Kale moved with deadly grace, his warrior training evident in every flowing motion. But the shadow stalkers were cunning opponents, using the cave's darkness to their advantage, peering and disappearing like wraiths. When one of them managed to slip past Kale's defense and lunged at Nova, her engineering instincts kicked in. She grabbed her portable scanner and activated its high-intensity light beam. The shadow stalker shrieked and recoiled as if burned, its form becoming more solid and vulnerable under the bright illumination. The light, she called to Kale. There. Weak two concentrated light, it's working together, they developed a deadly rhythm. Nova would pin the creatures with her scanner's beam, while Kale struck with precise, lethal accuracy. Her human technology and his Valdris combat skills complemented each other perfectly, turning what could have been a desperate last stand into an effective hunt. As the last shadow stalker fell, both Nova and Kale were breathing hard, their bodies gleaming with sweat in the crystal light. The danger had passed, but something else had awakened between them during the fight. The way they had moved together, anticipated each other's actions, protected each other without thought or hesitation. You fight well for a researcher, Kale said, leaning his blade with practiced efficiency. Nova found herself studying the play of muscles across his back and shoulders, the graceful way he moved even when performing mundane tasks.
Ow.
Bad yourself for someone who's supposed to be my enemy. Their eyes met across the cavern, and the air seemed to crackle with tension that had nothing to do with the recent battle. Kale moved closer, his golden gaze intense and searching. Nova, he said, her name soft on his lips. We are no longer enemies, we are ... We're seeming to struggle with the human words. Partners, allies, is that all we are? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering with words, Kale reached out to gently cup her face in his large, warm hand.
Nice.
His thumb traced across her cheekbone with surprising tenderness for someone who had just been wielding a blade. With deadly precision, what we are becoming, he said quietly, has no name in either of our languages. Nova leaned into his touch, her heart racing. Then maybe we'll have to create a new word. When their lips met, it was with all the pent-up emotion and adrenaline. From their shared battle, their growing connection, and the knowledge that their time together was precious and uncertain. Kale's kiss was gentle despite his strength, and Nova could taste the promise of something that transcended the artificial boundaries. Their species had drawn between them. As they held each other in the soft glow of the crystal cavern, both knew they were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. The following days passed in a dreamlike haze for Nova. She and Kale fell into an easy rhythm of shared survival and growing intimacy. He taught her to identify edible plants and how to read Zirian's weather patterns, while she showed him the finer points of human technology and shared stories of Earth's diverse cultures. Their conversations grew deeper and more personal with each passing hour. Nova learned that Kale was considered something of an outsider among his own people for his interest in other species and his questioning of traditional Valdris beliefs about warfare. He, in turn, was fascinated by her stories of human creativity and innovation qualities that Valdris society often viewed with suspicion. My commanders would say, "You are making me soft," Kale admitted one evening as they sat by the hot springs. Nova was nestled against his side, her head on his shoulder, both of them having long since abandoned any pretense of maintaining distance. And my superiors would court-martial me for fraternizing with the enemy, Nova replied, tracing lazy patterns on his chest with her finger. The silver markings on his skin seemed to respond to her touch, glowing faintly with bioluminescent light.
It does.
That frighten you? He asked, his arm tightening around her protectively. Nova considered the question seriously. A week ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Now, looking up into Cale's golden eyes, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing beneath her cheek, she found her answer had changed completely. No, she said firmly. What frightens me is the thought of never seeing you again. That night, their relationship crossed another threshold. Their lovemaking was tender and exploratory, each of them learning the mysteries of the other's body with patient care. Despite their different physiologies, they found ways to bring each other pleasure that transcended species barriers. Nova marveled at the way Cale's skin seemed to shimmer and warm under her touch, while he was endlessly fascinated by the way her expressions changed with each sensation. "You are beautiful," he whispered against her neck, his accent making the words sound like poetry. "So are you," she replied, meaning it completely. She had come to love everything about him. The careful way he moved through the world, the intelligence that burned behind his eyes, the gentle strength in his hands. But their intimate bubble couldn't last forever. On their 5th day together, Cale's enhanced senses picked up something that made him tense with alarm. "Ships," he said quietly, moving to the cave entrance, coming from 2 directions. Nova joined him, her portable scanner confirming what his natural abilities had already detected. 2 different vessels approaching Zarian, one with human energy signatures, the other clearly Valdris in origin. "They're looking for us," Nova said, her heart sinking. Cale nodded grimly. "My people will have tracked the last transmission from my patrol ship. Yours will have followed your research vessel's distress beacon." They stood together at the mouth of the cave, watching the 2 ships maneuver in the purple sky above. Both vessels seemed to be trying to identify the source of the signals while avoiding direct confrontation with each other. "What happens now?" Nova asked, though she dreaded the answer. Cale pulled her close, his embrace fierce and protective. "Now, we decide who we really are, citizens of our respective species, or something new entirely." That night, possibly their last together, they made love with desperate passion, each touch and kiss a declaration of defiance against the forces that would separate them. In the soft glow of the crystal light, species differences ceased to matter. There was only Nova and Cale, 2 beings who had found something precious and rare in an impossible situation. "Whatever happens," Cale whispered as they lay entwined afterward, "I want you to know that you have changed me, shown me that there is more to existence than duty and warfare." Nova pressed her lips to his throat, tasting the salt of his skin. "You've changed me too."
Me.
That love doesn't recognize boundaries. Outside, the wind carried the distant sound of landing engines.
Don't.
Their time was running out, but neither of them moved to leave their sanctuary. Instead, they held each other tighter, storing up memories against an uncertain future. "Promise me something," Nova said softly. "Anything. Promise that no matter what they say, no matter what they threaten, you won't forget this. Won't forget us." Cale's golden eyes blazed with fierce determination. "Promise. I swear by the spirits of my ancestors, I will find a way back to you." The confrontation came at dawn. Nova and Cale emerged from their sanctuary to find both rescue teams had located their position during the night. Human soldiers in environmental suits faced off against Valdris warriors in ceremonial armor across the rocky clearing where Nova's ship still lay in twisted ruins. Commander Jackson Hayes, Nova's former supervisor, stepped forward with his weapon lowered but ready. "Engineer Chen, thank God you're alive. You've been searching for days." On the opposite side, a tall Valdris female with intricate gold markings and an aura of absolute authority addressed Cale in their musical native language. Nova couldn't understand the words, but the disapproval in the commander's tone was unmistakable. Cale responded in the same language, his voice respectful but firm. Whatever he said caused several of the Valdris warriors to shift uncomfortably and exchange glances. What did you tell her? Nova asked quietly. The truth, Kale replied, that you saved my life, and I saved yours. That we are no longer enemies. Commander Hayes overheard and his face darkened. Nova, step away from the hostel. That's an order. Not hostile, Nova said, moving closer to Kale instead of away. His name is Kale, and he's the reason I'm still alive. The Valdris commander spoke again, this time in accented human standard. Warrior Zorith will return with us immediately. His contamination by human influence must be cleansed. Contamination? Nova felt anger flare in her chest. He showed me more honor and kindness than I've received from half my own species. Both groups of soldiers tensed at her words, weapons rising slightly. The situation was balanced on a knife's edge. One wrong word away from turning into a bloodbath. Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Nova and both armed groups. There has been enough violence between our peoples. We do not need to add more blood to Zirian soil. You forget yourself, warrior, the Valdris commander said coldly. You have spent too long in the company of humans. You think like them now? Perhaps Kale acknowledged, or perhaps I have learned to think for myself. Nova felt her heart breaking as she realized what was happening. Both sides were preparing to separate them by force if necessary. And any resistance would likely result in casualties among people who were just doing their jobs. There has to be another way, she said desperately. Commander Hayes shook his head. Nova, you've been through a traumatic experience. You're not thinking clearly. This ... attachment. It's just survival instinct. Stockholm Syndrome. You dare, Nova said, her voice hard as steel. Out. Don't you dare diminish what we have. Kale reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers in a gesture that was both tender and defiant. In the old stories, he said, speaking to everyone present, there are tales of star-crossed lovers whose bond was so strong it could bridge any divide. Fairy tales, the Valdris commander said dismissively. Are they? Kale challenged. Or are they memories of a time when our species knew how to choose love over war? Nova looked around at the faces surrounding them, human and Valdris alike, and saw fear, confusion, and stubborn adherence to old hatreds. But she also saw curiosity in some eyes, as if Kale's words had awakened something long dormant. Not going back, she announced suddenly, the decision crystallizing in her mind. Not to a life where love is considered contamination and kindness is seen as weakness. Commander Hayes stepped forward urgently. Nova, you can't be serious. You'd be throwing away your career, your entire future. No, she said firmly, squeezing Kale's hand. I'd be choosing my future, one where I'm more than just a cog in a war machine. Kale turned to his commander, speaking in Valdris again. This time his words seemed to carry weight, and Nova saw. Several of the warriors nod slowly. The Valdris commander looked thoughtful for a long moment, then responded in a tone that sounded almost respectful. What did you say to her? Nova asked. I reminded her of the old law, Kale explained. A warrior who finds their true mate may choose exile rather than separation. It is rarely invoked, but it still stands. Both groups of soldiers looked uncertain, their clear-cut mission suddenly complicated by ancient laws and unexpected developments. Finally, Commander Hayes lowered his weapon completely. Nova, if you're serious about this, you know what it means. You can never come home. Nova looked at Kale, seeing her own determination reflected in his golden eyes. Home isn't a place, she said. It's wherever we choose to build it together. As the two ships departed, one carrying disappointed humans, the other bearing Valdris warriors who would report that one of their own, chosen love over duty, Nova and Kale stood together in the purple twilight of Zarian, ready to face an uncertain but hopeful future. They had chosen each other over everything else their worlds had taught them to value. And perhaps somewhere in the vast galaxy, their choice would inspire others to question whether the barriers between species were as insurmountable as everyone believed.